Hey trainers, what is up and welcome back to another video. Today we're diving into the new deck concepts that I made for the upcoming format Ascended Heroes. So to start off with, we have Mega Dragonite. So what does Mega Dragonite do exactly? It has that ability Sky Carry. It says once during your turn, you may switch your active Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. This is going to be quite good because there's a lot of decks going around that can trap your Pokemon into the active spot and do a lot of nasty things to it. So having that ability to switch out your Pokemon negates the fact that it's trapped in the active spot, as well as having some tactile switches, and we're going to go over that a bit later. But the attack is going to say Dragon Glide does 300 damage for 2 lightning energy and 1 water energy, and it says discard 2 energy from this Pokemon, and how everything comes into play. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the ability to switch out your Dragonites for one of the free retreat Pokemon or some 2 retreat Pokemon in combination with Air Balloon, but essentially you want to use Eelektrik's Dynamite ability, accelerate one of the lightning energy you just threw away in the discard pile back onto your Mega Dragonite, attach 1 for turn, or use the other Eelektrik to accelerate another energy to it, so you have your attach for turn for some other Pokemon, and then you retreat that Pokemon back into Mega Dragonite and just do 300 damage over and over again. Of course, this requires some setup, so to do that, we have the Dragonair as well. It has that evolution guidance ability that says once during your turn, if this Pokemon has any energy attached to it, you may use this ability, search your deck for an evolution Pokemon, and put it into your hand. So essentially, we're setting up a Dratini, evolve into Dragonair, and those Dragonair will get us other Dragonairs or even Eelektrik, and through the means of Eelektrik, we can accelerate those energies to our other Dragonair to get our deck rolling. And of course, you're going to think, oh well, Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon is just going to counter this deck. Well, you're wrong, because I've added the Eelektross EX. So this Eelektross EX is going to help us counter that Cornerstone. So what does this Eelektross do? So it has the Split Bomb attack. It does 60 damage to 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon. No, it doesn't say benched Pokemon, it says any Pokemon. So it does 60 damage to 1 active Pokemon as well. But essentially, there is a way where you can use the Eelektross early game even with the means of Hawlucha to get some double bench KOs, but essentially this Eelektross EX is here for the Disaster Shock. So the Disaster Shock does 190 damage, and if you choose to discard 2 energies from that Pokemon, the opponent's Pokemon is now paralyzed. This will help us set up our board state as well, giving us an extra turn, or perhaps next turn even switching into the one prize Rayquaza. So what does this Rayquaza do? It has perfect synergy with the switching capabilities of the Dragonite. It says Assault Break does 20 base damage plus 90 if this Pokemon moves from your bench to the active spot in this turn. So there's your finishing attack. So first, you do 190 damage against the Cornerstone, and then next turn, if they can't switch out or Penny or anything to that Cornerstone, you just use the ability of the Mega Dragonite to switch in your Rayquaza to finish off that Cornerstone. But of course, you can just use Split Bomb to get that other 60 damage on it if your Rayquaza is prized, for example. Alright, so we also have the Eelektrik. As I mentioned before, this is going to be big for our energy acceleration because our Mega Dragonite requires 1 water and double lightning energy, but we can pre-attach that to the Dragonair while setting up our board state, as well as switching over the energies, like dividing them rather than putting all of your energy onto one Dragonair, and that makes it a big target, so the opponent will know that and it will just target down that Dragonair. So this deck essentially always wants to go second, and I've chosen a split 1-1 Budew and Technical Machine Evolution. So either on your first turn going seconds, you either Itchy Pollen to slow down your opponent, or your Technical Machine Evolution to enhance your board state and to go even faster. And of course, there's this one Shaman in it to protect your board state from potential Wellspring Mask Ogerpons, because Terror Box is still a problem and we need to tech for it. For the supporters, it's just a straightforward line: 3 Lilies, 3 Iono, 2 Arven, 2 Research, and 1 Boss's Orders for Gusting. Now for the item cards, not much notable here. We have 2 Earthen Vessel, just to get those water energies out, because you can get the lightning energies into your discard pile, which you can accelerate with the Eelektrik, but you need to attach the water energies from your hands, essentially. And then there's also 1 Tool Scrapper. So if you go against a Cornerstone deck which has Bravery Charm on it, you can just scrapper that Bravery Charm away to make your life easier. And there's also the inclusion of the Hero Escape for the Ace spec. So imagine Dragonite with a Hero Escape just can't be knocked out by Lily's Clefairy, because Dragonite's a dragon Pokemon, and having Lily's Clefairy in play is very bad for you, unless you have Hero Escape, of course. So that's going to help you out tech against that matchup. What's also interesting to note is I have a Levincia in here. So there will be times where you cannot attach the water from hand, or you just have one Eelektrik in play. You can only accelerate one lightning energy to your Dragonite, but then you can get Levincia, get those lightning energies back into your hands, and attach them once. Overall, I really like the concept of this deck, and I can't wait for the set to come out to start testing this deck right away. Right, and moving on, we have Mega Froslass. So Mega Froslass is quite an interesting deck. So I think this will be far superior to the Grimmsnarl. It doesn't have the sniping capabilities as the Grimmsnarl deck, but it has a very strong attack. So it has this Resentful Song, which does 50 damage for each card in your opponent's hand. But there's a trick to it. So let me get to it. So first thing off, what you want to do is set up your Snorunt, evolve into Froslass, chip away some damage. You know, just those Mega Pokemon always have like 330 HP or something of the sort, and getting that down to 300 flat enables the power of the Froslass. So what you're going to do is not enable your opponent to draw a prize card, and either trap your opponent with the clutch ability from the Yveltal, or just budge you Itchy Pollen until they get no setup. But if they get their Mega out and you get some chip damage on it, you can Iono them to 6 cards in their hands, and there's your 300 damage for the Froslass. And then again, later in the game, when they knock out your Froslass, they get to draw 3 prize cards, which instantly does 150 more damage for your other Mega Froslass. So I think this will be a very strong archetype, and combining it with the Munkidori Froslass engine, I think this deck will be unstoppable. You can play single prize board state for very, very long until it's time for you to strike, or just, you know, spread some damage counters all over the board and end up with a devolution play. And then also in this deck, there's also the inclusion of the Hero Escape. I think Hero Escape on any Mega Pokemon is going to be very big, because this Froslass will have 410 hit points. That's extremely hard to pull off for any Pokemon. So you can expect this Pokemon to be 2-shot always. Now for the supporters, we have something more disruptive style. We have 4 Ionos, we have 3 Lilies, 3 Arven, 2 Hilda, and 1 Professor Terra scenario to heal off the damage from your Mega Froslass. If you go against a big basic style deck with multi-prize Pokemon and not a single prize Pokemon, and they land some damage on your Froslass, you can just turbo it back, evolve your other Snorunt into Mega Froslass again, attach 1 water, attach the Hero Escape if it's not on there before, and just start swinging again and again. For the item cards, we have a more disruptive style as well. We cut down on the Body Puffin and the Ultra Ball to make room for more counter catches, to be able to use more clutch plays, to stall the opponent, because this deck will take a lot of time to set up, like for the Freezing Shroud, placing damage counters all over, channeling back over with the Munkidori. So having the clutch Yveltal is going to buy us that time we need. Right, moving on to the next. I am very excited about this one. It is going to be the Ents Zoroark. So the Ents Zoroark is getting a huge buff thanks to the Zekrom inclusion. So we all know Zoroark, it's not a new archetype. What the Zekrom is basically going to do is going to have a 1 Shred type attack onto the Zoroark, as well as the Rampage Thunder. So one thing Zoroark really lacked is a counter to Cornerstone. But now with this Zekrom, it has a higher damage output, and it has an answer to Cornerstone all in one Pokemon. So basically, you're going up against the Cornerstone type deck. They start with the Cornerstone instantly, but they're still charging it up. You know, they can't get it rolling straight away. They need 3 energies, and it's always hard to do so. So you can start swinging with the Zekrom. So the Zekrom has the Shred attack, which isn't affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So it goes through Cornerstone stance, but it only does 70 damage. But we're going to boost that with the Binding Mochi. So the Binding Mochi does 40 extra damage if your active Pokemon is poisoned. And we're going to poison ourselves through the means of the Pachorant. So if you switch any benched Pokemon with the active Pokemon, it has to be a dark Pokemon, do note, and that Pokemon is now poisoned. So being poisoned, we can accelerate the Binding Mochi to it, and if we choose to attack with the Zekrom, copying the Shred attack, it does 110 damage instead, which ramps up even faster, which forces your opponent to answer to that attack. Alright, everything else is basically a standard Zoroark deck, but I did include the Darmanitan. So there were times where the Darmanitan was forgotten. It was cut out for both Reshiram, but I think the Reshiram is not going to be a big inclusion here anymore. Don't quote me on that later, but I think Zoroark is going to benefit more from the Zekrom than it does from the Reshiram, because basically the Zoroark has 280 HP. Everything in the format right now can just hit through it and just one-shot it, and then having the Reshiram round will not do much for you, and that Virtuous Flame only does 170 damage, which is not going to be a big inclusion here. But the Darmanitan is going to be attacker on itself. So imagine a world where you're going up against Gholdengo, they knock out your Zoroark, and you're just left only with the Darmanitan in play. You can even use End's PP up to accelerate energies onto your Darmanitan and start swinging with backdrafts. So after a knockout from Gholdengo onto your Zoroark, you can use the backdraft attack to counter their Gholdengo and having a single prize Pokemon in the active spot. So they need to set up another Gholdengo, they need to find a superior energy retrieval plus boss's orders onto another Zoroark, or if you play a single type board state, they just can't keep up with the prize race. So I think this, bringing back the Darmanitan in a 2-2 line, is going to be a big inclusion. You also have access to the reversal energy, so you can use Flame Body Cannon, but you need to be behind in prize cards to do so, because reversal energy is only active when you're behind on prizes. But I think having access to Backdraft makes this deck way more powerful, because there's also the Cerulege in format, and against Cerulege we can just play with the Darmanitan only, and if they have a ton of energies in the discard pile, we can still use End's PP up with an attachment full turn, and then your Darmanitan is doing a lot of damage. So do note, they need 13 energies in the discard pile to be able to knock out your Zoroark, but then with 13 energies, this backdraft is doing 390 damage in return. So that's why I chose to run a higher count of the End's PP up. But if this is not working for you, if this is not your playstyle, feel free to cut 1 or 2 of these to make room for some other techs. But then, for the supporter line, we have Lily's Determination, Iono, Serrano, Boss's Orders, you know, the regulars. But then instead of Heroescape, which I added previously in another video, I added the secret box this time. Because there is a world where you're going to start off with the Zekrom or the Reshiram in the active spot, or perhaps even the Darumaka, and having access to End's Castle through the means of Secret Box is going to help you out, I swear. Because this deck isn't including any Air Balloon in it. So that's why I mentioned you can cut some cards from it and add some Air Balloon, but I think End's Castle, while also have a Stadium Bump, is going to be big. Right, moving on to the next, we have Joltik Box. Now I think I am very excited about this one because there is a new card which makes it a lot better. We have the Light Ball. So normally the damage output was capped at 300, which was Pikachu's main damage output, but now through Light Ball, Pikachu can do 350 damage and can one-shot many more things in the format. So we all know Jolting Box. It has the Jolting Charge attack. So it says search your deck out for 2 basic energy cards, 2 grass energies and 2 lightning energies, and attach them to any Pokemon you like. What the good thing about Joltik Box is you always go second to be able to use Jolting Charge, and then you look at what the opponent is playing, you look at their setup, and you think like, now we need this Pokemon to attack with, now we need that Pokemon to attack with, and you set up your board state that way. But if anything fails, you still have Crispin to accelerate your energies for you. But now having access to that Light Ball, Pikachu can do 350 damage, and I quite like the fact of that. Anything else is just standard Joltik Box, but I've also added the Heavy Baton in here because I feel like if you're going up against decks where you can just amp you can just focus all of your Jolting Charge onto your Iron Hands. If you find your Heavy Baton, you recycle those energies onto your other Pokemon, perhaps another Iron Hands, or recycle them onto the Pikachu. And I think that's going to be big because I've encountered moments where I only got to charge up 1 Iron Hands, and then I've lost that Iron Hands, and I was basically a sitting duck. So having that Heavy Baton in here, instead of a higher recovery count, in my opinion, is better. Because recycling the energies, keep the energies in play, and you can just play around with on other Pokemon, and just even Crispin for other Pokemon, or just, you know, Boss's Orders onto something else, and just get your knockouts that way. But If all else fails, we still have the Gravity Mountain, which allows a Pikachu to knock out other Pokemon because Stage 2 Pokemon will get minus 30 HP. So that will allow Pikachu to knock things out like the Dragapult or Charizard without the Light Ball. But you can even have both into play, which makes Pikachu do 350 damage, and you can knock things out which have 380 HP. Do note they need to be Stage 2 for that. But also with the popularity of Charizard, there is also an abundance of Pidgeotto-X. So Pidgeotto-X, and if you have an Iron Hands with the Future Booster Energy Capsule in play, you can one-shot the Pidgeotto-X for 3 prize cards. And I think that is awesome. So expect this Joltik box to see an increased amount in play. Alright, next up we have a Rogue archetype, and I couldn't be more happy about this one. It is the Bellibolt EX. So I've recently released a short video of the Bellibolt with the Raging Bolt EX, but this one is focusing more heavily on energy cards because you can get your Pokemon out with the new supporter Canari. So what does Canari do? It says search your deck out for 4 lightning Pokemon and put them into your hand. So basically, there is your setup. You can set up through the means of Canari. It's best to go second in this deck, I believe, because having a turn 1 Canari will be huge for Bellibolt. Of course, you're not going to evolve in that same turn, but you can have an explosive next turn. For the Pokemon, it's quite straightforward. We have 3 Bellibolt, 3 Tadbulb, 3 Kilowattrel, 3 Wartortle, and then a heavy line of Iono's Voltorb. So this is going to be our main attacker most of the time, because imagine a world where you can accelerate 20 energy to your Pokemon. If you have all 20 energies into play, this Voltorb is doing 400 damage. Mind-blowing, I know. But then you might be thinking, hold up, Onesie, you can't accelerate more than 1 energy to turn. Yeah, you know, Bellibolt does that for you. The Eelektrik Streamer allows you to accelerate any energy to your Pokemon as long as you have them in hand. And if any of your Pokemon get knocked out, we play a heavy count of Superior Energy Retrieval, as well as the Max Rod for the Ace Spec. And on top of that, we even have the Levincia to have even more energy cards back into our hands, which we can accelerate further with Bellibolt. So I think this new supporter will unlock Bellibolt's true potential to be able to shine next format. Now, over to the last one, we have Rotom Box. And I do think I am the most excited about this one, because Rotom Box has a special place in my heart, and seeing it being so powerful, it just gives me joy every single time. So you all know the new Rotom EX, it has multi-adapter ability. So it says each of your Pokemon that has Rotom in its name may have up to 2 Pokemon tool cards attached to it. If this ability goes away, discard Pokemon tools from that Pokemon until only 1 remains. So essentially, normally you could only attach 1 tool card to any Pokemon unless otherwise stated, and this Rotom EX is otherwise stated. So the trick is to use the new Rotom, go second, see what the opponent is playing, and use Roto Call on your first time to be able to set up your board state. And the cool thing about these Rotom is just the fact that they come in different types. So you got the Mo Rotom, which hits grass. Then you got the regular Rotom, which hits for Psychic. Then you have the Heat Rotom, which hits for Fire. Then you have the Wash Rotom for Water. Then you have another regular Rotom, which hits for Lightning. And then you have the Disruptive Rotom. And you guys pointed this out, and I think this will be a big inclusion in here as well, because if you're going up against big item-based type decks, this Crushing Pulse is going to disrupt that opponent even further, because there will be times where you can just not set up the board, and having access to this Crushing Pulse early on can just set back your opponent, allowing you to build up your board state before they do. And of course, if all else fails, you still have the budget to use Itchy Pollen. And this time, I also added the Lily's Clefairy, because with access to Lily's Pearl, this Lily's Clefairy will not only be just 1 single prize worth, it makes this Rotom do double damage. Note to Dragon Pokemon. So this will be a big counter against Mega Dragonite. If they have a Hero's Cape available, it doesn't matter. If you have all of your tools, even a Brave Bangle onto your Rotom, this will do a big amount of damage. So with the Rotom EX in play and with the Lily's Clefairy, we can have up to 11 tools onto our Pokemon. Do note, if any Pokemon other in play are named Rotom, we can have 11 tools in play, which does 330 damage with our Psychic Rotom, but through the means of Clefairy, we are doing 660 damage onto the opponent's Dragon Pokemon. Yeah, I think this combination will be heavy played next format. So you can see this deck really packs a punch, and I do wonder what you guys will think of it. And that wraps up today's video. If you find this video helpful, please make sure to like and subscribe, as well as letting me know down in the comments which deck you think might shape the next format. And if you want to stick around for a little bit longer, I've got more deck profiles, gameplay videos, and learn to play coming your way. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one.